Here we are again, Michael Bettine here, and today we're going to talk about Burma Bells and bell plates right here on It's Cuppa Time. Burma Bells and bell plates. I'd like to start with Burma Bells. Now these are known as Burma Bells because they commonly came from the region known as Burma, which is now Myanmar, over in Southeast Asia. But you also find them in neighboring countries like Cambodia and Laos, Thailand, even into Vietnam. And these were commonly found in Buddhist temples and struck to signify prayer times or different times during a temple service, things like that. And there's a couple of unique things about them. One is they're designed to be spun, so you get that whirling or Doppler effect sound. And the other is their design. Now these are not cut out of like a square or rectangular plate of metal. These are cast to shape, probably using either a sand casting method or a lost wax method. But they are cast in a mold, then they come out, and commonly they are filed to get the dark crust off and make them look sort of shiny and nice. And you can see here, you can see the lines going across the file marks. So they're cleaned up and made to look more bronze than dark and kind of crusty. Traditionally, they are played with a wooden mallet like this. And you can see, it almost looks like a small croquet mallet or some sort of a big hammer like you might use in a woodworking. And when they're struck on these ends here, because that is, where you're going to get the best sound. But first, let's look at the design of how they're made. So we can see the shape here. And often, too, they might be called pagoda bells because people think of them as being shaped like a pagoda. Or even Buddha bell. This could be the Buddha in a lotus position, and these are his knees out here, his head up here. I've heard various descriptions. But as I said, commonly known as Burma Bells, but the name is Kyzee or Kyzee, depending on who you talk to as far as the pronunciation. And I have seen probably 3 or 4 different ways of writing that out. So when you look for these, especially online, like on eBay, you have to try all the different spellings. I look up Burma Bell, and then I look up Kyzee by like 3 different spellings. So you need to know that in order to find these. The important thing about the construction is for the size. This is about probably a 10-inch bell. They are very thick. We can see that here. Also, the ends are much thicker than the middle. And this is by design. And that's one of the reasons you want to strike the edge, because there's more metal, there's more mass there. But we can see how that is. And, like I said, they get to whirl a bit and you get a really great sound. So there's just kind of a straight sound. And with the wooden hammer, as you can tell, you can get a really percussive strike in there. But let's get this whirling a bit. And one thing I like to do when I'm playing mine is wind them up like this, so when you hit it, it unwinds and it spins quite fast. Now these come in all types of sizes. I have a real small one, and for the life of me, I couldn't find it to show you today. But I have a small one that's probably about 2.5 inches, maybe 3 inches. Very thin, very light. It actually has a deep sound for its size because it's so thin. And it doesn't make much sound at all. I mean, there's no volume there. And I've seen these up into, I don't know, like 18, 20 inches or so. You get something like that, you're probably talking 35, 40 pounds of bronze. So these are very heavy, and I used to carry about 10 of them with me, all in the same case. And it's a small little square case, and people want to help me and go, oh, I'll pick up this case. And they didn't realize it was like 50 pounds of bronze in that case. So that was always kind of a fun thing for me to see people react to that. Let's play through some of them that I have. So let's now demonstrate some Burma Bells and associated things. I must have 20, 25 Burma Bells that I've collected over the years. All different sizes and shapes, from really small ones to like 9-inch ones. I've seen them up to about 18 or 20 inches wide. And those are massive, and they weigh probably 35 pounds, 40 pounds, because it's solid bronze. So all these are bronze, and the thing with them is, if you put them all in a case, it becomes a really heavy case. So as I said, traditionally, Burma Bells are played with a wooden mallet, much like you would use for barrel making or carpentry or something like that. I have some special mallets I put together. These are some modified chime mallets that I've had. I think I modified these back in about 2004, 2005. But you need something that's going to be solid and have some weight to it, because this is a lot of bronze to move. Now you can use, what have I got here? Here's a rubber ended mallet that's fairly heavy. And you can get a pretty nice sound out of it. I like this one for various bells and things because it's soft enough that I don't get a big impact sound, but there's some weight there. I've got some other rubber ones that don't weigh a lot, but this one has a lot of weight, so I can actually get it to get a decent sound on the Burma Bells. So let's go through my bells. I have what I sort of like put together 4 different sets of bells. I have one set here that's the UFIP bells. I have a second set here of different ones I've collected over the years. And I have a third set. I have 3 of them down here, and I have the 4th one up here. It's 3 of the Steve Weiss brand, American-made Burma Bells, and 1 Asian one. So as I spoke earlier, you can find these in Southeast Asia, but they are made in different places. So here I have from UFIP in Italy. They make a nice set of these. These are sand cast. If you look at and feel them, it's a very rough surface, just like sand. So these are cast to shape, sand cast. They do make a bigger one, but these 3 are the standard ones. And this is another one I've got that I suspect is made by UFIP for an OEM brand. But these form a nice melodic set. And like all the other things I'll be talking about, my bowls, my bells, and all that, none of these are tuned to Western notes. None of these are tuned to the piano. So when I put these together in sets, it's just using my ear and really what sounds good. And I like to find different, groupings that have a melodic capability. So here's the 4 UFIP ones here. So they have a scale, and it's usable that I can play melodic type things. I like to use heavy cord on most of these so they don't end up spinning like this one, which is on some really fine nylon cord. This is heavier. This is like climber's accessory cord. I like to use it on some of them because then they're not spinning all over and you're trying to hit them and they're twirling around. So if I want to play something quick, they're not moving as much. They're not spinning rapidly. So again, here's the set of 4 UFIPs. Then here's 4 that I've put together to give me another scale. Again, it's hard when things are spinning around to control them. So that's my second set. And currently I'm not using either of these sets. I'm using a third set that's working well with what I'm currently doing and the way I'm playing. I have all of these on thin doubled cords. Let me just show you here, like this. Just doubled up cords, and they're thin, so these can be spun. I'm looking for the whirling sort of sound with these 4. So, what I generally do, well, here, let's just play the notes first, I guess. So another scale. So I have 3 different scales I can work with. And when I was using all of these, before the whole pandemic thing, I was carrying a bigger set. I would use all of these bells, all of these cymbals and that. And that was great, but I found that sometimes I was only playing these like once or twice. Hitting a bell maybe twice in a night. So when I redesigned my setup after the pandemic, after, taking that time off, I looked at it and I wanted to make it more compact, but I also wanted to eliminate things that I just wasn't playing that much. As much as I like having them with me, it's like I just sort of got tired of carrying stuff to hit once or twice. But here's the type of things I would do with especially these 2. So I could combine them together and have even a larger scale of notes. So I like the melodic capabilities of the metal percussion. And as you've seen in the other videos, talking about the bowls and other things, talking about the bell plates later, and talking about all this, I'm always thinking melody. especially if I have a group of instruments. So here I have a group of 12 Burma Bells. So melody is a big part of what I'm thinking. Okay, let's get back to the current ones I'm using. And like I said, I have these set to spin because that's just something I'm into right now. So I will wind them up. As you notice, sometimes I might hold one to keep it from spinning so I can control what's going on. So I like whirling sounds right now. 2 months from now, I might not be into whirling sounds and I'll be on to something else. So that's a big part of what I do. I just keep evolving. I'll do something for a while and then it's like I'm either bored with it or I found something else to replace it. So right now I'm into whirling sounds. I've got the whirling Burma Bells. I've got the 3 Peisty roto sounds, a couple other things, and I like that sort of effect. But it's always evolution. So let's look at a couple other things here. Here is the Trigon from Martin Blaze in Germany. This is a Sun Trigon. This is the first one I got. I got this one from Jens Zuga. And apparently this is one of the very first ones that Martin made. It actually has a sticker on it for the sun instead of a stamp. And I liked it so much I bought the whole box of the small Trigons when I was at the Gong Summit. But I like this a lot. It's got a lighter sound than the Burma Bells, higher pitch, lighter, but you can also control the spin just by twisting the cord between your thumb and forefinger. And these are great. He also makes bigger ones now, which sound really fabulous, and they're, I think, is 2 octaves lower than the small ones. So check out Culture Spring, Martin Blaze. Makes great, great instruments. Related to all of this, these are some triangle plate bells made by Ryan Shellady in Kansas City. I got these at the Gong Summit also. I fell in love with them right away and had to have them. And they're very much related to a bell plate. They're thin. There's no, heavier edges like on a Burma Bell. It's all one thickness. These are also sand cast that have the rough surface. And they're kind of a cross between a bell plate and a Burma Bell. I get sort of a plate sound yet I can spin them and get different effects with it. But just in the middle here, really, really nice bell plate sound. And I can get them going more. Hitting them on the edge again with a heavier mallet. Or I can get a bit softer sound. And I love these. I love the sound of them. I've got 3. So whenever I get 3 instruments of the same type, the same family, again, I'm thinking melodies. I'm thinking melodic. Just like you're playing 3 notes on a piano. You can play a chord with 3 notes. So that's how I think. So those are the triangle plates from Ryan Shelley. And now we'll move on to bell plates of all types and sizes. So now we are going to talk about bell plates. Now first we need to talk about metal. I'm going to use my phone here so I get it right because I don't have it quite memorized. But there's 3 types of metal, and this is how we get the designations when you're making, flat rolls of metal. There's metal plate, which is the thickest, which is sheet metal that is 6 millimeters or thicker. Then there's metal sheet, which is 0.5 millimeter up to 6 millimeters. And then there is metal foil, which is usually less than 0.2 millimeters. So if you think of like Reynolds aluminum foil there. And here I have a piece of sheet metal I use, so we can kind of get a difference here. So here's common sheet metal, like you would use in heating ducts. Very thin, doesn't really have any resonance. But that's sheet metal. So what we are talking about with bell plates is plate metal. Now a lot of them are molded like this one, but some of them, like these aluminum moon plates I made, are actually made out of sheet metal. Well, let's look at this one here. This is commonly called a Tibetan bell or maybe a Tibetan gong. Actually, this one was made in Nepal. There's really not anything made in Tibet, but Tibet is, again, the buzzword. So anything from Asia often gets labeled as being Tibetan. This has 2 holes in it for hanging. I like to just use one to allow it, again, to spin like a Burma bell. And I think it gives it a little more resonance. It doesn't deaden it. But these are common in 2 main sizes. This, which is I think about an 8-inch, and then a bigger one about a 12-inch. You can find these on eBay. You can find them at various import stores and things like that, just like we've talked about before. But this is pretty roughly made, probably cast to shape, just like the Burma Bells. And then you can see it's been filed on it. You can see all the different lines going through it here, to get that crust off. Let's get this side here. You can really see the lines there. So when things are made, they have a dark crust on them. Same thing with a chow gong. Chow gong comes out of the oven, it's completely black. They put it on a lathe, and they lathe out that middle bronze part, leaving the black circle in the center and the black edges. But these aren't bad. Again, you have to know your prices. I've seen these go for crazy money. I've seen these where you can pick them up on a real deal. I think I paid about $35 for this 10 years ago or 20 years ago. I don't know. I've had it a long time, but it's fairly heavy. Let's get it spinning here. It's a fairly heavy piece of metal. You can see the thickness there. But this is sort of the, I guess you could say, the original bell plate. I don't know how long these have been made, historically going back. But this could be thought of as like the original bell plate. Now, one company that really specializes in circular bell plates, or at least used to, is UFIP in Italy. And a good friend of mine, Italian percussionist Andrea Centazzo, worked with UFIP back in the mid-1970s, and he experimented and invented all kinds of different bronze percussion instruments, different bells and cymbals and gongs. And they were originally released under the label Ictus 75. And that was a whole collection of amazing bronze instruments. And I do collect UFIP stuff because I really like the sound, and they know how to make B20 bell bronze. So I have a few different UFIP instruments here that we'll go through. And they still do make this. This is a fairly recent one. I've had this maybe 8 years or so. These are called Ogororo. They're 5 bell plates, and you can see even similar to this one, the Tibetan one, but these are really nice. And I like to use them once in a while. Not necessarily the whole set, but I might bring a couple of them. I can get a little more melodic qualities happening. In experimental percussion, these are great because you can lay them on a table, like on a towel or something, and get this nice sort of muted sound. So they're very versatile in a lot of different ways. But these are the Ogororo. Now, Andrea developed 2 other sets of bells, and I've got some of them here, and they all came in sets of 5. And the next set was the Sheng, which moved up from there and were bigger sizes. So I have 4 of the Sheng. I'm missing 1 from the set. And this is a later set from the 80s. Actually, I should use something a little heavier. I normally strike them with my modified chime mallet. When I want them to ring out. I know you can't see the bottom one I have here. But they have very much a church bell sort of sound. A lot of overtones. And I usually use these three in my current setup because they have a nice interval between them, and they really work out with the current stuff I'm doing. Now, related to that, UFIP made another set of bells here, which, again, these were all cast into shape and then filed or lathed down. And you can see the rough edge on here. This is the actual crust of the metal. And then these were put on a lathe, and they clean the surface off and tune them up. This is a Locol plate. And I have this one on a spinner because I like to get this one spinning and getting that Doppler effect. And this is one of my favorite instruments I have. I just think it has a nice, warm, mysterious sound that fits in real good with the gongs. And I like that slow vibrato pulse with it. Unfortunately, I only have the one from the set of 5. Hopefully someday I can procure some of the others. And this is an older one. This is actually one of the Ictus ones from the 70s. So UFIP, very good makers of all kinds of bronze instruments. And they make tuned flat bell plates. They make the Ogororo, but unfortunately they do not make the Sheng or the Locol anymore, which is a shame because they're really some beautiful instruments. Something else I have out of my whole setup, and I've talked about this before, where nothing is tuned to a Western note, tuned to like the piano or something, except one instrument, and that would be this. This is a Belas, a bell plate from Russia, from Lugovsky Percussion, and this one is actually tuned to E. And I tend to do a lot with E as a note, so it fits in with my whole setup real well. And you can get, I think, 3 or 4 chromatic octaves of these bronze plates from Lugovsky Percussion. And, really huge ones and then some smaller ones. And they're beautiful. They ring out for a long time, especially the bigger ones. Like I said, UFIP makes tuned bronze plates like this. Also Matt Nolan over in England, he makes tuned bronze and aluminum plates, mainly for symphony orchestras. He's really gotten to become quite an expert on making these tuned instruments like that. So that's a type of bell plate too. So often you'll see circular ones, rectangular ones, and they're called bell plates. Same sort of thing. Or plate gongs, I've heard, or plate bells. But generally, like we were talking, plate metal is thicker metal, so that's kind of where we get it. Now I have some gongs here that I think of more as bell plates or sounding plates. This is one from Michael Peisty that he made for me. This is one of my favorite instruments. This is a 14-inch volcano gong of his, but it's actually quite thick. You can see there. And it has a really solid sound as opposed to a crashy gong sound. And I think of this more as a bell plate. I crash it near the edge, I can get more overtones. I get sort of a dissonant sound. But in the center, it's really much more of a plate. If I take a gong mallet here, softer mallet, so it's a versatile little instrument. It's heavy. It's really heavy. So holding it here, I can feel that in my arm. But this is a gong, but it could also be thought of as a plate. Now I have a recent addition to my setup here. This is from Grotta Sonora in Italy. It's a 19-inch handheld gong, but it's fairly flat, if we look at the profile, and fairly thick. And it's quite heavy, so holding this up for a long time, your arm's going to get tired. But I think of this more as a plate than an actual gong. To me, a gong, at least a flat gong, is going to be crashy, like a wind gong or a sun gong or something like that. Whereas a bossed gong with the knob in the middle will have a solid sound. But I think of this almost more as a very large bell plate with a very deep tone. So some of these instruments sort of cross the line between a gong and what I would consider to be a bell plate. So next I want to talk about something I get a lot of questions on, and that is the aluminum moon plates that I made back in 2010 for a composition I wrote for a music festival. There's a set of 6, you can't see the bottom 2 down here. But the first 3 are square, and the next 3 are rectangular. And I get a lot of questions about that. How come some are square and some are rectangular? And there's no easy answer for that. A big part of it is when I was writing this composition and thinking about what sort of instrument I wanted to build, I did a lot of research. You can go on the internet and you can find all kinds of great stuff about bells and how things vibrate and stuff like that. And then I did all this reading and all this research and had all this in my mind, and I had a dream one night about what to do. It just kind of came into my head, and I woke up and I went, oh, okay, that's how I need to do it. I had the idea for the whole thing, the sizes and everything and how they would sound. And I built this set that I call moon plates because I was working with these. I work with moon energy. I'm actually a moon person as opposed to a sun person. That's a whole other story. But I call them moon plates, and they're made out of aluminum plate. See, it's fairly thick, and this is, I believe it is 361 aluminum. Now when you go to buy metals, and all the gong makers like Steve Huback or Ryan Shellady or Matt Nolan or Sean Aceto or any of these people, they'll tell you, metal comes in different alloy formulas. So you just can't go and say, I want to buy bronze or I want to buy aluminum. And because they'll go, well, what what type do you want? And they're made for different purposes. You know, some are made to be anti-corrosive, some are made to resist, you know, other things. Some are made to be easy to work with, easy to mold, easy to cut. There's a lot of different things. So not all alloys of like bronzes and aluminums and brasses and things like that are sonorous. Some of them do not sound good at all. But that's not what they're designed to do. They're designed for other purposes. So from my research, 361 aluminum seemed to be the most sonorous aluminum plate out there. It really had a nice sound quality. So I constructed these for my 2010 composition soundings, which you can find on my website if you want to listen to it. And yeah, I don't know. I just had this idea in my head, and it just, after I did all this research, it seemed right. And the first three are made square. And that's actually the opening phrase from Soundings, is these three plates. And you can see, aluminum can be a very resonant material. These have a nice, clean tone. You don't get all the overtones of a bronze with aluminum. You get more of a pure pitched note. But because it's a very light metal, you also don't have the power of a bronze, like the bronze bilas here. Long sustain there. Here's the small aluminum plate. It's pretty much died out, while this one is actually still ringing. So there are trade-offs when you have instruments made out of different metals. Now if you make these out of brass, they would have a short sustain, but they would be darker sounding, because brass tends to have a darker sound, a lower pitch. So anyway, those are the three high ones. I'll play the three lower ones. And part of the idea is, if you keep going in squares, suddenly you're going to end up with these really huge squares of metal, which get to be unwieldy to hang and to use. So part of the idea was going longer in a rectangle shape to get the lower pitch, but still keep it manageable. Yarnwong gong mallet. This big one I like a lot because it has a very church bell quality to it. Depending on the mallet you use, but it has a really deep sound on a little harder mallet. So depending on the type of mallet, I can get a nice bright percussive sound or a softer, darker tone. But again, especially with the softer ones, you're not getting the power that you would out of a similar bronze plate. So I like to use those. Sometimes I'll use maybe one or two of the bigger ones and have them blend in with what I'm playing. They work well with the gongs. Now the other part of this is the mounting system. These are all nodally mounted. Again, that came from research on the internet. Look up nodal mounting. There's a formula for it, a mathematical formula, how to find where the node point is, and you measure it, and then you mark it, and you drill your holes. So you can see, like, the chords, as they get bigger, the chords go down further from the edge because the nodal point is moving down. So these are nodally mounted. Let me just take one off and show you this. I've seen different designs. So what it is, they are hung between a V shape here. The string goes through and then it comes up into this wooden, this is just a wooden dowel that I put in there. And then a second string comes up to put it on the stand. But there's no chord touching. Like if I just put it on flat, you know, it would touch like this because there's no curvature. So on something like a plate like this, you really need to mount it this way in order for it to freely vibrate. And we can see that here. So there's only this very small portion of the chord that's actually touching. And I guess I should explain the nodal point. If you've ever seen like a xylophone, a marimba, or a vibes, percussion mallet instruments, and you'll notice where the cord goes through the bar to hold it onto the frame, that is the nodal point. And the nodal point is sort of the null point where it's not vibrating. So if I were to put the cord up here, it could impede the vibration some. Whereas the nodal point, like I said, in a marimba or vibes bar, that's always goes through the nodal point, and that is where the bar really isn't vibrating. And if you watch somebody play a marimba or vibes, they don't hit over the chord because that's a dead spot, unless they want a dead sound. But they hit in the center of the bar because that's where it's most resonant. So that's what nodal mounting is mounting it at the sort of the dull node where it's not vibrating and you're not interfering with the sound. So that's basically it. That's Burma Bells, bell plates, sort of hybrid bell plate gongs, things like that. Hope you've got some information out of this and it's maybe inspired you to get some instruments or work with the instruments you have in different ways. As usual, if you like this, give it a thumbs up and hit subscribe below. And I guess you can hit that little bell too if you want to get a notification that the next video has come up. I'm trying to get these up every Wednesday. So next week, we'll look at cymbals, bell cymbals and Chinese cymbals and different types of cymbal type instruments that we can use in our sessions. So, thanks for watching. See you next week.